Hello guys, today we are gonna do an interesting playthrough. So Mura basically uploaded a Calamity Overhaul Mod where they work the Murasama sword. So basically, as you all know, I think, Murasama is normally post-devour of God's weapon in Terraria, but in this mod they made it so that you can obtain it from the start of the game, as you can see right here. And it basically scales with every boss you defeat, and it also unlocks some new abilities which we'll get into later. So the first ability is basically the sword slashes as you know them, but they are very small in range and damage, but the range and the damage will scale according to the bosses we have defeated. So before we start talking about the first boss, I want to introduce a fellow gamer, which we are gonna call by the nickname Mich.
Hey gamers, let's play some Terraria.
So how do you like this sword?
So okay, we're at the first boss. The sword looks pretty good, so I guess the first boss is pretty easy, huh?
Well, actually no. As you can see, I'm kinda struggling a bit, although I'm not taking damage. That's because the Murasama has very unique strengths and weaknesses, and the boss difficulty is gonna be very inconsistent, as we're gonna see later.
So, okay, I can see that its attacking pattern is pretty straightforward, but I guess it will become much more complicated later on, right?
Yeah, because this is the King Slime, so basically the slime enemy that you encounter in every RPG, but it also has the glowing gem, the glowing ruby at the top, which shoots bolts at you, which is hard to dodge for other games.
Okay, so you're almost there. The Murasama has that one attack pattern at this point, right?
Yeah, at boss 3, after 2, we are gonna unlock the next ability, which is basically the most important ability for the rest of the playthrough, but we are gonna talk about it then. For now, we are about to defeat King Slime. It's at 200 HP. You know, I like to take my time with those bosses because I don't wanna die in a stupid way and just like lose my progress because I haven't. There we go, we defeat the first boss.
Almost no damage taken, that was pretty nice.
Yeah, because I wanted to do a cleaner fight. Also, we're gonna showcase our loadout every time. This is the Murasama, and the stats. And this is our buffs. And this is our armor and accessories. We are gonna talk about them in more detail when we need to. So this is the second boss. This is a bit of a story. This is the first Calamity boss. What do you think of it?
Well, it looks pretty cool. It's like a big worm, two big worms.
Yeah, it's 3 worms. It is the main boss and the 2 servants. I want to explain something here. So the worm bosses will get obliterated by the Murasama because they are segmented, so every segment of the boss can take damage, and Murasama can damage multiple segments at the same time. And also the final ability will just pierce through the entire worm and deal massive damage. We will talk about that much later. But for now, we also use the King Slime mount in order to bounce on top of the boss. You can see that, right?
Yes, and it's already at half health, like it goes by really fast.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that Murasama at this part is very broken because it deals too much damage. Like the scaling is much stronger than it should be. I think they're gonna fix it in the future, but for now we're gonna abuse it as we can. Yeah, we just defeated it.
Wow.
Yeah, some bosses are gonna go by very fast, others much slower, but we are gonna get there. Now, so the loadout, it's basically the same as before. Also, the granite accessory is pretty cool. So now we get to the Eye of Cthulhu. This is the best, harder boss, and I say that because it is a boss that keeps its distance, as you can see. Now it's not that hard, but in phase 2, which is right now, it's gonna go Wacom mode and it's very hard to hit. But you can see the crazy DPS of the Muramasa. Like most other weapons would need like at least 2 minutes to get this to reach HP. Like, do you see the DPS of this thing?
Yes, the DPS is very high, and the first phase, as you said, went by really fast. So if you keep the correct distance from the boss and just deal too much damage in a matter of time, it can go by really fast.
Yeah. Now we abuse the specific attack where right here it goes in a straight line and it charges us and we can deal damage to it. So we kill it pretty fast for a sword, for a true melee sword. We're gonna explain what true melee means later. Now we just change up our armor and also use the Aero Stone. So now we take on Crabulon. This is the boss with the best music theme in all of Calamity. It's a very meme song. I love it. I play it in my car when I drive. What I want to say before is the mobility accessories and the mobility of the armors and shit. It's very important in this playthrough because you have a true melee sword, so you need to be able to maneuver very quickly in order to dodge the attacks because you don't have much time to react to them. Also here we see for the first time the second ability of the Muramasa. We're gonna explain it right after this boss, but for now we just look at Calamity getting eviscerated. What do you think of this boss?
I mean, it looks pretty cool, and as you said, it's the first showcase of when it kind of teleports to the opponent like somewhat of a small dash, and I guess this can be really handy in future battles when there's gonna be lots of projectiles and stuff.
Yeah, it is the most important ability because, as I will explain, it not only does it onto enemies, it can dash also in air, like you can use it as a dash, but this is a more advanced ability for the harder bosses. But we will do it a ton later on because it's very useful. So yeah, right here we defeat the Crabulon boss.
Pretty easy so far.
Yes, not very hard. The puffs are about the same. Yeah, we can see the Aerostone right there, which is very useful. Now we will explain the second ability of the Muramasa sword. So you can aim with a specific button and launch your sword into a target. It will deal a little damage spin around in a circle, and you can teleport to it if you press another button. What I did for the king bindings was to bind the launch of the sword in the right click and the teleport ability to the left click. So if I right click, I launch the sword. If I left click, I teleport to it. It's very important because if I use any of the buttons, it's gonna be too slow because many of the fights are gonna need much faster reflexes. So this is the first boss, the very very famous boss. Is it a bit weird? Do you think it's a bit weird?
So yes, the level is kind of weird. Previously we talked the Cthulhu and now the brain, so are we gonna fight everything part of it or something?
Yeah, like Cthulhu or Mundo is the final boss, we're gonna see it later on. Here we are in the Crimson biome, is one of the evil biomes in Terraria. It's very important. I prefer it much over the Corruption biome for the Terraria players or the Crimson parts. So this, in the first stage you will fight its eyes with the mode because the Muramasa can pierce. In the second phase it tries to confuse you with projections of the brain. So you don't know which one of those is the real brain, and that's kind of hard. But if you run around left and right, you can dodge most of its attacks. Do you understand that?
Yes, it looks pretty cool, so you don't know which brain is actually the real one to attack it, and the patterns still look pretty straightforward, so nice.
So this is the second boss of the Crimson biome, the Perforators. This is a Calamity specific boss. Basically it's one big chest, hive mind I guess, and every time we drop to a certain health threshold, a worm-like boss will spawn. So right about now, yes, the first worm spawns. You don't have to kill them to kill the boss, you need to damage the main brain, but they're very annoying, so I try to kill them. This is actually one of the harder pre-hard mode bosses because the 3 worms are very hard to dodge simultaneously, and also it leaves some blobs right here on the platform, and it is hard to keep in mind. What do you think of this?
So yeah, the boss right now are starting to get a little bit more complicated with the worm attacking you simultaneously to the other one. And still the Murasama has very high DPS, so it goes by pretty quickly, and it doesn't really look that hard so far, so but it still needs you need to control it the right way to be able to take advantage of its power.
Yeah, it doesn't look that hard, but it kind of was because I had to keep on dodging this rain of ichor, that's how it's called, simultaneously with the worms, and also the blobs. You cannot see them right now, but they sometimes spawn, and I actually lost a couple of times with this boss. This is like attempt number 5 or 6, I think, which is one of the very few pre-hard bosses which need multiple attempts. This is gonna keep on going for a while. I was also very careful because, as you can see, I'm kinda low health, and when I am low health, I focus on dodging, not on DPSing, because I wanna get my potion cooldown back, because potions in Terraria have a 1 minute cooldown before you can use them. We have 100 HP, the potion heals 100 HP. So we want to stall out the time in order for our potion cooldown to come back so we can heal a bit more. Now, as you can see right here, we are about 100 HP, which is pretty low. You don't want to be that low in a fight. And we haven't even spawned the 3rd worm yet, because this 2nd worm is segmented, and if you kill the middle segment, it will split into 2 worms. Right now it's chasing me very fast. It is a pretty hectic battle, I would say. Much harder than the corruption counterpart Hive Mind. The Hive Mind is one of the easiest bosses in all of Terraria and Calamity. So this is also one of the pros of the Crimson, because I like the harder bosses over here. And also the aesthetic is kind of better. The other aesthetic which I'm talking about is kind of purple, more like cancerous. This is more like flesh and blood and shit, you know.
So yeah, and as I can see, you take a pretty good job in dodging and damaging the boss, because the projectiles are getting more and more complicated, but still we're done. Took some time, more time than the other ones, so it's starting to get harder.
Yeah, we also have Molten Armor right here, which we are gonna use up until hard mode, because Molten Armor in this mod buffs true melee damage, and we are to melee damage, so we are gonna use that. As I was saying, as we battle Queen Bee, the Murasama sword is considered true melee damage. In Calamity, true melee is treated differently than normal melee, because it means that the sword you're using has a limited range and doesn't have any sort of projectile, because many swords in Terraria have projectiles that you can launch and kinda break the game if they get buffed up too much. And true melee damage has many benefits. For instance, many accessories buff only true melee damage and not normal melee damage, and we are gonna use them to our advantage. As you can see, Queen Bee is extremely easy, because the DPS is just too high at this point, so we kill it pretty easily. And yeah, as I was saying, we are gonna use other true melee tricks up our sleeve, so we can defeat the bosses faster. Yeah, here also use Aerial Light Armor for change. For example, as I said earlier, the Molten Armor has bonuses for the true melee damage, much more than the melee damage. I think it is 20% for true melee and 10% for melee. Also, when we get wings later, which you're gonna see what wings are, hitting a boss with true melee damage resets your flight timer. So basically you can fly infinitely, as opposed to the other classes which have like 5 or 6 seconds of flight time each time. So this is a crossover boss from a game called Don't Starve, which they got the Eye of Cthulhu boss that we fought earlier, and we got this boss with deer claws. Not too bad, you can stay very close and do the insane DPS of the Murasama. So yeah, just like that we have defeated this.
Yeah, it was pretty quick, but it still needs. You need to be very careful to dodge the projectiles while using the high DPS of the Murasama.
Now we go into Skeleton. This is the boss that unlocks one very big part of the map, the dungeon. We're not gonna discuss about this in this playthrough because it is basically a boss rush. But in a full playthrough we would see me going through it. This is basically a giant skeleton head with the arms. You first need to kill the arms because the boss takes no damage if you don't. And then you can damage the head. This is another easy boss because as you can see the head gets really close to you, so you can do this insane DPS by this weapon. I'll talk about the true melee stuff later in the game when they pop up, but for now, how do you think of this boss?
So yeah, it looks pretty cool. Hands going back up again. And
yeah, they respawn once it reaches 30% HP.
So you just need to be careful while killing the hands, and then when you can damage the head, just abuse the DPS to go by pretty fast.
Also, you will see that the boss has some weird colors to it, also the skulls that it uses. This is because I use a danger sense potions, which danger sense potions basically highlight all of the enemy projectiles in Terraria so you can see them better, especially for the night bosses. And this is very important for me because the visual cues are much easier to follow if you use this. That was a bright yellow instead of a pale white. Yeah, so this was Skeleton pretty much. Now for the Slime God, this is the final pre-hard mode Calamity boss. It is like the King Slime that we did before, but it's God. It's two instead of one slimes, and they will split up later. They also spawn smaller slimes, they fire these bubble-like projectiles. It's kinda hard actually. I also did a couple of attempts for this boss. Do you think it's hard? Does it look easy or hard? I don't know, I can check.
Yeah, it looks kinda harder, especially with the two bosses at the same time. The projectiles look confusing, and their pattern is not that predictable as it was in the previous bosses. So.
Yeah, the only particular move is this thing they're doing where they try to go above you and slam you down. This is the only thing I'm using. I'm also using the second ability a ton here because these are also bosses that keep their distance, and I try to rush at them. Also, one thing I didn't explain before, the second ability deals a very big burst of damage. So if you land it and you can dash at the enemy, you deal much more damage than a normal slash, although it looks like a normal slash. And I'm also pretty low right here. You can see I've taken a lot of hits, mainly from these bubble-like projectiles and sometimes from this small scale slime that spawn, because you can't see them all. Like some of them you are going to miss. It's very hectic.
I mean, yeah, it looks almost impossible to dodge them all, but if you slow play it and be patient when you dodge so that you can recover your health, it can go by without getting that low.
Also, one very important accessory right here is the Scarf of Evasion. This is one scarf you can get after Skeleton, and it allows you to dash a short direction, gaining full speed from your boots. This is very important in order to dodge. Yeah, right here we kill it. And we will always have this accessory for the rest of the game. We are going to explain the third ability right now. In order to use it, you need to do 2 of the Rising Dragon strikes, which is the dash, one right here, And once you do those two chassis, you can basically press down and do this downwards charge where you try to hit your enemy. It doesn't deal that much damage and admittedly is the worst of the three abilities, but it was sometimes useful because the speed that you fall is very fast and this can be used for dodging as opposed to damage. For the final pre-hard mode boss, we have the infamous Wall of Flesh. This boss is placed in Hell or Underworld for Terrarian gamers, as we call it. So basically this is one giant wall of flesh with two eyes and a mouth in the middle. The eyes shoot lasers, the mouth fires walls at you. The eyes take more damage than the mouth. What do you think of this? Does it look super weird or not?
Yeah, it looks very weird. You have to stay back and kinda be careful again with the attacks, but it comes at you in a way that you have to go back, so you can't just go through it or whatever.
Yeah, this is a one-directional fight. The most dangerous thing here is the lasers and the sights. He fires some demon sights which are homing and deal like 200 damage, which is basically half my health. Here I use the dash for defensive purposes. So as you saw right there, I dashed backwards instead of dealing damage. This is gonna be very useful later on. Also, one mechanic we haven't touched is the rage and adrenal emitters. Whenever you are very close to a boss, you gain rage, and when your meter fills out, you can do increased damage and take less damage for a big duration. And if you dodge, and here you can see it gets pretty intense. And we have a lag spike there as I kill it, and we enter hard mode. I will explain the adrenal emitter in the next boss. For now, let's just jump right into hard mode. As we enter hard mode, the first boss is Queen Slime. This is the counterpart to the King Slime, which was the first boss of the early game. It's like King Slime but harder. It flies in the second phase. It goes by very quickly. So let me real quick explain the adrenal emitter. If you pass 1 minute without getting damaged by the boss, you can trigger adrenaline, which lets you do a ton of damage for about 5 to 6 seconds. It is very important for damage phases if you get good at dodging and the boss patterns. If you don't use the adrenal emitter and you get hit, you will take half the damage. This is also very useful in bosses where damage is not as important. Right here we just basically speedrun King Slime and we are gonna move on to the next one.
This boss was very hard, Cryogen. This is the first hard mode boss of Calamity. It's basically a giant ice cube, but it has many ice type attacks and too much projectiles, and later in the fight it gets much faster. And as you can see, it's also very far away from the source and has a regenerating shield. So we need to spam the Rising Dragon attack in order to beat it. But this time it's harder because if we dash through one of the projectiles, we will take damage. It does happen a lot in the fight. This is just one of the longest fights of the game. What do you think of this?
Well, yeah, it looks like it's hard mode in this one, but I was wondering what the difference between hard bosses is and the other. Is it harder or really hard extra?
Yeah, so basically hard mode is the second part of any Terrarian playthrough in general, because once you defeat the Wall of Flesh, certain changes happen in the world, and new biomes spawn from the Hollow biome, which is basically just a fairyland with the unicorns and shit. Also, you can spawn new orbs, which are very useful. We will not be using them in this playthrough, but in general they're very important. the bosses get harder, the enemies get buffed at PHPs, you have new events to trigger. For example, there's an event on the Pirate Invasion, which is exclusive to hard mode. It's considered the second part of the game, and in a Calamity playthrough, it is the second of the 3 parts of the game, because once we defeat the final boss of Vanilla Terraria, we have the third phase, which is post-Moondog boss. And it's pretty much evenly split. Like you have like 10, 12 bosses in pre-hard mode, you have like 20 bosses in hard mode, and like 10 bosses post-Moondog. So this is the biggest part of the game.
Wow, it sounds that we still have a lot to go, but now it gets dark. How can you see where the enemy is, its attacks?
Yeah, so this is why the Danger Cells potion is important, because the Danger Cells potion is not reliant on the lighting of the stage. It just shows you where the projectiles are, so that's why we spam it. Also, I'm using the Flask of Vicor, which is basically a flask that buffs my Muramasa to deal extra damage, to basically lower the opponent's defense every time I hit it. And this makes them a bit yellow. It's like yellow, I would say, because that's literally what the Icor debuff is based upon. I know it's kinda cringe, but whatever. And we used not do it to the boss. Right here we beat it. It was a long fight, it was a hard fight, but good dodging, good fun, and now we will move on to the next one. For the first of the mechs bosses, we have the twins. They are considered by most players to be the easiest boss. This is definitely not the case here, because as you can see, as with the Eye of Cthulhu, it is a ranged boss and we have to dash to it, and also Spasmatizer, which is a flamethrower one, has, well, a flamethrower, which is very bad for our melee playthrough. But at this point of the game, Muramasa deals too much damage, so the rate feedback goes down too fast. But you can see the resemblance with the third fight. You remember the third fight there?
Yeah, sure, and it looks kinda like that, but it's harder, it's dark again, and it's really complicated, as I can see. The attacks are kinda weird.
Yeah, it is darker because it is nighttime, you cannot fight those bosses on daytime for some reason. And it is complicated because, again, we have 2 bosses to take care of, which is gonna happen a few times in the playthrough. We have Leviathan and Akira coming up later, and also the post-Moondog bosses do sometimes do that. You need to just focus on dealing damage to one till you kill it, and then do the next. You can't fight them both at the same time all the time and kill the same thing. That's not a good strat, and not what does this. Right here we beat them. Well, why don't you solo this one?
Okay, so next we have the aquatic skirts. It's a big underwater snake, as I can see, but it will be nothing compared to Muramasa's abilities, and that does already comes in pretty useful. But it goes out of the screen and back again. I don't know, it looks like it moves kinda slow, but I guess you can damage only specific parts of it.
Well, you can damage the entirety of it, and it does move slow, but the core premise of this fight are the projectile fight from like those little spike thingies. And I have to remind you, this is a worm boss, and you remember what I said about worm bosses earlier.
Yeah, but yes, the projectiles now seem kind of small and hard to dodge because they come at the... Is it like they're kind of following you or something?
Yes, they have homing capabilities.
Okay, but I guess if you slow play it and be patient, it won't be much of a problem because it takes damage quite easily, I think.
It does, because we have the multiple segments. Also this part is kind of hard because we have all those toxic clouds. Whatever you see red in the screen are toxic clouds. We take more damage if we touch those than from the spikes, and it fills up the screen, so I have to move back and forth in the how is it called? Sulfuric Sea. Yeah, that's its name. So I can dodge the crowded screen.
Well, yeah, the screen kind of looks full of these cloud things, but yeah, it's kind of hard at the end, but Muramasa just deals so much damage, so and it's already done. Nice.
For the second mech, we have the Destroyer. This is another one boss to consecutive at this point. This doesn't take damage at the beginning of the fight. It is a buff that Calamity made with this boss because, as you can see, it spawns there with all of the segments. And if you hit it where all the segments spawn, it's gonna take enormous amounts of damage and it's kinda broken, so they fix that. But then again, it's another one boss who credit with the ultimate damage. Although the boss is very big, 25 lasers. So, and the only hard part of it is you shouldn't get hit by the head, because if you do, you're gonna pretty much get one shot.
Wow, this is definitely the biggest worm yet, and it's huge, but as you said, it takes too much damage for there are a lot of parts where you can damage it, and I don't see that many projectiles, well, apart from those laser things, but it looks manageable.
It is, none of the mech bosses is difficult at this point, and I also have a lot of experience with those from Pandilla Terraria. I've been playing them for years now, so they won't be too much of a problem. The only problem is that it has a very big HP bar, like we're talking about hundreds of thousands of HP, which is much more than another boss at this point, but that's not too much an issue. It would be an issue if we dealt less damage, because all the mech bosses spawn at night, and if daytime comes and you have defeated them, they will flee and you will not kill them and you have to start all over. That is the problem of some other playthroughs, which you may have the worst weapon and you may not have enough time to kill the bosses. But that's for another video for another time.
Yeah, and as you said, it's dark, but it doesn't seem that much overflowing in this fight particularly. And the worm bosses, as I can see, are the ones when you just need to take it slow and just focus on high DPS while patiently dodging the attack.
Yes, precisely. And we don't have to do much resource management here. In other fights we have to keep track of the posture cooldown, of our dodge cooldown. The dodge cooldown is a mechanic where basically from this point and onward we're gonna have a dodge every 90 seconds in which whatever attack hits us will not deal damage, but this only occurs one time every 90 seconds. We need to keep track of that. Much later in the post-Mulos bosses we're gonna have a revive, so we take it again after 90 seconds, and these are resources you're gonna have to manage. I also want you viewers to pay attention to the loadout every time we finish it, because the accessories, as I said before, are the most important part of most fights. For another easy fight, we have the Brimstone Elemental. This is a biome-specific boss, which is only in the Brimstone Drag biome. This is one variation of the Hell biome made by Calamity. This has some pretty interesting lore. Basically, it says that the final boss of this mod, Calamitas, basically just went there and killed everybody, and now this is a deserted hell city with kind of buildings in the lake. Like right now, we're standing on a destroyed bridge. Basically, Calamity has a lot of lore. It's pretty interesting. We will not be discussing that now. Just a fun trivia when you first time viewer of this boss.
Nice. And as you said, that was very fast, and well, I guess Muramasa just keeps getting stronger, right?
Exactly. And for the last of the mech bosses, we have Skeleton Prime. This is just like Skeleton, as we did in pre-hard mode, sorry. But it has 4 arms. Every arm is different. There's one arm with bombs. There's one arm with lasers. There are 2 other arms which has claw hands, which was like the skeleton's hands that they deal damage. Also here you have to kill all the hands before damaging skeleton. But now that they are 4 and our Muramasa is bigger in size, it's easier to hit them. And we can also dash skeleton. And this is probably the easiest of the mech bosses for us, for this playthrough, because it doesn't keep that much of a distance like the twins. It doesn't have the giant HP pool like the destroyer. So we are basically able to kill it in under like 2 or 3 minutes. Very fast. Now for my least favorite boss for the Calamity hard mode, the Calamity Clone. This, as the name suggests, is a weaker version of the final boss, Calamitas. It has many of the same attacks like those skull projectiles, and also it has a bullet head phase, which we will see later, where we can't damage it and we need to dodge all the stuff. This boss is very hard. I find it difficult to dodge all the bullets and all the skulls at the same time, because I am not one that to post-modern content score. What do you think of this?
Well, yeah, it looks more annoying, I would say, because it has a very small hitbox and it just moves around all the time, and all those skeleton projectiles just keep coming at you.
Yeah, right here is the bullet phase I was talking earlier. As you can see, it fills up the entire screen. You need to be very careful, you have very good reflexes. Also later, her 2 brothers spawn, and you also need to kill them first before damaging her. Some little minions will spawn later. It's a pretty annoying boss fight. And also, yes, what you said was right. It does have a very small hitbox, and that makes it harder to hit with the Rising Dragon Strike. But our DPS is pretty good. This is also a nighttime boss with time restrictions, so we need to be fast. We can't play too defensively. But right now, we are not taking too much damage. We're pretty good, so I wouldn't play it.
Well, yeah, I thought you almost died before, but the health regen was pretty good, and now you have almost full health, and yeah, you can have managed being patient and fast at the same time. As you said, you can be too patient about it.
Yes. Oh, here we see the 2 brothers. They spawn. One has a flamethrower. The other just kind of dashes at you. Pretty much a twin reference, and kind of the same fight, but they have more health. Also, one of them is pretty useful because it drops a pretty rare flamethrower. That might be crucial if we do a flamethrower zone playthrough, which is an idea that I have, but we'll see about that. For now, this is the second hardest part of the fight after the bullet hell, because you fight all 3 at the same time basically, and as we said before, fighting multiple bosses at the same time is very difficult, and you need to be more alert in this case. But for now we're doing pretty good. We are not even below half HP. As you can see there, the second brother died. So now we need to get Calamitas to about 10% HP in order for this to get the second bullet here.
And yeah, I think we just figured that, and well, I think it's one of the first bosses that has that many phases, and yeah, it's just kind of confusing to remember what the phases do all the time.
Also, it's one of the bosses that has dialogue. I don't know if you saw that with the little orange letters. They do it so they can make Calamitas a bit more interactive, have a bit more character. I like that, it's a good addition. It's not, it doesn't concern us of course because we are basically doing the boss rush. We are here for the boss dodging experience, not for the game. We like to fight bosses, we don't like to mine for our shit. Right here we defeat it, we collect its loot and we can move on to the next boss. Now for the pretty much the halfway point of the hard mode experience, we have Plantera. This is a jungle themed boss, it's basically a huge road with 2 phases. This is one of the most famous vanilla Terraria bosses because in the base game it unlocks a ton of stuff. It unlocks new events, it revamps the dungeon in order to have new enemies, new drops. It's a very important boss. For all melee playthroughs, it's classically a very easy boss because it moves very slowly. As you can see, the projectiles are kind of following you, so if you move around in circles, you can dodge them all. Right here is the second phase, which is called a bit of tentacle action, and it chases you around a bit faster, but it's super easy. Like, do you like that boss?
Yeah, it looks pretty good, and as I said, it's very important, but especially in the second phase, that DPS was so fast, and it just went by quickly, as you said, with the melee
Yeah,
weapons.
this is one of the peaks of Murasama as a weapon in the progression of the game. Moving on, we have a pair of bosses, Leviathan and Akita. This is an ocean biome boss. So basically we start by fighting this mermaid thingy, which is an Akita, and in about 40% HP is called the Leviathan, which is the legendary sea creature, which you see also in other games and other lore-centric like franchises. Basically a giant whale. This is, I think Anahita is harder here for me because it has a very small hitbox and I can hit here too well. Leviathan is not that hard because it's very slow, projectiles are very slow, not with their quick damage to it. But what do you think is the hardest difference from your perspective?
Well, I mean, I think I will agree with you, and I think that definitely looks a bit harder because at the start of the fight, its HP went by so quickly, it was almost like at half health in the first 10 seconds and something. Yeah.
Yeah, that happened as I said before, Murasama is broken, but if you had a weapon with less DPS and the fight would last longer, you would be hard pressed to dodge a lot of stuff. Because also one of the Anarchista's attacks confuses you. Basically, confusion in Terraria means that when you press left, you will go right, when you press right, you will go left. It is very bad, it is very confusing. I'm not indebted. It will happen in the boss fight because it is very hard to dodge if you get confused.
Yeah, I mean, if that were to happen to you, it's almost certain that the random, so you can just change that fast while fighting the boss and dodging the projectiles.
Yeah, you need to basically expect, like, you need to see, oh, I'm gonna get hit by the confusion projectile, so now let's switch gear in your brain and kinda be prepared. For example, now we are at very low HP, and I was kinda worried at this point, because now we fight both of them at the same time, and now that we defeated Anahita, we can play a bit more defensively, because, as we said before, the Leviathan is easy to dodge, and we can wait for the potion cooldown, we can go in circles and dodge all of his boulders and kill off the weak piece of his spawns. But now pretty much said, ooh, this was a pretty big chunk of damage, that was my mistake. I got to get this there. You can never do that in Calamity. But I managed to hold on by just a sliver of HP, and now also the potion cooldown is coming back, so we are able to execute that. Do you remember Crabulon from pre-hard mode? The crab mushroom biome thingy? Yeah, this is basically Crabulon in space, as every veteran YouTuber has ever said. This is Astronoreus. It's basically the same boss, of course harder because more projectiles, more health, you know, the basic stuff right now. The interesting part for this boss is that it spawns in the astral infection biome, which is a new biome at the Calamity mode, where basically a space virus comes and infects your land and everything is spaced in by you being on Earth. It is a very good biome, it's probably the favorite new biome that Terraria adds. I prefer it from the Sukulit waters where we thought we are kind of scared before, because it's more interesting, and also the enemies and the bosses are more interesting as well. What do you prefer, the Sulfuric Sea or this biome, the infection?
Well, I think I might prefer the sea because right now it's dark again and can't really see much, especially projectiles who don't have skin color. So I don't know. I think the sea would be better for fighting people.
That's one way to look at it. Also, the sea is very interesting because below it is the abyss, which is the most mysterious biome of Calamity mode. It basically has a lot of hidden treasures. It has 3 phases. In each phase you can explore after certain bosses. I think the first one is after Skeletron, the other one is after Poltergeist, which is a later boss, a post-Moonor boss for that matter. And it's also at the bottom of the abyss we have the boss respawning item, the Terminus. One of the coolest additions to Terraria. The boss rush is probably my favorite when you eat all of Terraria and all of the models. Very cool. Actually. And I also have a video where I beat it using the summer clone. You can go to the last one. But now back to the fight. So, Mick. Do you think this is harder or the previous boss was harder? Because I'm kind of thinking about that.
I mean, this one definitely has more health, and well, its only weakness, I would say, is that I can see it moves kinda slow, but you again have to be very patient because it has too much health, and the previous ones, which were the 2 bosses, maybe they were a bit more confusing.
Thank you for your feedback. Now, for the main boss of Terraria, the Ghost. This is the main boss because it dies super quickly in pretty much every playthrough. It's very slow, it buys 2 little projectiles. This spawns in one very peculiar spot, which is an internal temple. This is basically a natural temple in the middle of the jungle. I don't know what they say that was, but yeah, what do you think?
Well, the only difficulty as I can see is that otherwise it's very slow, it's really fast, it's already over, so yeah.
It is already over, but what you said about the cram space will be very important in other fights where we have also space limitations, because that's a big deal in Calamity. Oh, this is one of my favorite vanilla bosses. Look this one. Actually, my first YouTube video explains how to use this boss using basically start of the hard mode gear, which is the gear we use for cryogen and which is considered big in vanilla Terraria. Unfortunately, you can't do this in Calamity because, well, Calamity buffs at the top, especially in the HP department. They are better than most players. It is considered a difficult boss, but I've memorized it so much over the years as I to try it also for the video I have to make, and I don't find it very difficult. I think, what do you think actually for this? Oh no, this is the hard part where basically it's both invisible and invincible, and it does you for a very short duration, and this is the only part where you can damage. This is one of the hardest mechanics in the area because you have to dodge it very, very fast, because it is also very fast, you can see that, and you have a very small damage window. You agree?
I mean, yeah, this one definitely seems harder than the previous one at least. And the moment when it changed phase and it was all dark and the way it moves, it was really fast and it became invisible at one point, as you said. That was definitely one of the harder ones so far.
This is basically Queen Bee on steroids, making Goliath. It is exactly that. It is much cooler thematically because it's basically when you defeat Golem and Plague falls into the jungle and much Plague theme enemies spawn with like anti-oxygen masks and shit, and they spawn different weapons. So basically this is the culmination of it all. But it's basically Queen Bee. And it also has a pretty cool nuke attack which we're gonna see when it reaches 50% HP. Do you remember Queen Bee?
Yeah, of course. And as you said, with the jungle again, tight space as we said, it moves kind of in weird patterns, I would say, but at least I don't see that many projectiles this time.
Yes, you don't see the projectiles because they are not visible, but trust me, they do exist and we get pretty close to dying there. It is also a hard boss. The weird patterns where it dashes, which you said earlier, are basically because it dashes diagonally. It is the only boss that does that, instead of the Queen Bee which dashes horizontally. And also I have cleared the largest space for this fight because I had trouble defeating it in the smaller basic space. But now we are pretty good, we are doing pretty well, we are at 6%, we have our potion coming up, we have our dodge coming up. Right here I use the second ability, the punch down thingy. It was very useful in this fight because when you use it, you fall down in a very fast pattern, in a very fast manner, and you are able to dodge a lot of abilities which you wouldn't be able to dodge if you just fell down at normal gravity pulling speed. Oh, here also we have an identification for the nuke attack. Isn't that a bit cool?
Yeah, it as you said, it notifies you that the big attack is coming. But yeah, it has a lot of HP as I can see, and well, it looks kind of hard because it's kind of dark. As you said, the projectiles are not really visible, and yeah, it's as you said, one of the harder ones again.
Also takes a long time to defeat because I'm once again taking my time. I don't wanna die. I wanna have my potion up. I wanna have my dodge up. I dodge a lot. I don't focus on dealing damage. Also dealing damage is very hard because it's hard to land the Rising Dragon Strike, which is once again the only way we have of dealing damage to this thing. I enjoyed this fight very much while filming it because it feels very action-filled. Like it feels like an anime action movie of some sort because I dash all over the place. It dashes all over the place. There are a lot of projectiles. We're in the jungle. It is a very nice theme. I don't know. It's one of the more movie-like fights from this playthrough. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's definitely, it looks kind of unique actually. It's nothing like the previous ones. And yes, as you said, you have to dash around a lot. The boss does that as well. And yeah, it's one of the coolest fights actually, I would say.
Yeah, and now it's over very, very nicely. I remember this boss, Wonders of Light. So basically, when I started playing Terraria, the 1.4 update has just come out, and I was having a very hard time getting adjusted to the whole gameplay mechanics and stuff. And when I got this boss, oh my god, guys, it was so hard. It was so hard. I had to manually make a sky bridge in my first Terraria world. And an asphalt sky bridge, which I literally did for the entire large world that I had manually. It took me like 4 hours or some shit like that. But in the end, I was able to master the movement patterns and the attack of it so well that I defeated it, I think, 15 times in a row. And the sword drops, I think it's called Starlight, I'm not sure, but that's what I recall. It's one of my favorite vanilla weapons, so cool. Like the way it attacks you so fast. This is one of my favorite moments of the boss. I also tried to do a no-hit playthrough, no-hit attempt at this boss for some time. I didn't manage it because it was too hard and it was too tiring. I might do it in the future, but for now we defeated it for this playthrough in the Calamity mode. Ooh, this is the Argent. This is Golem on steroids, and actually hard Golem fight. And of course, the advantage we have here is that we have infinite space because it's for surface. But on this fucking wall, always I forgot to kill them and they always damage me. It also has those tokens which are like fountains of fire. It has this little thing that goes back and forth and shoots you. It is a very annoying fight. Fortunately, we can use the Murasama to damage all 5 of its thingies. I think I don't know how they're called, but yeah, what do you think?
Well, it actually looks kind of confusing as you said with the walls and things that are action stuff, but as I can see, the Murasama again comes directly on the face.
Yeah, fortunately, because it is very hard to dodge this boss for a long time. Now for the penultimate boss of Vanilla Terraria, but definitely not the penultimate boss of Calamity Terraria. We have the Lonely Cultist, it's basically a cult leader. It is the standard mage opponent that you face in most RPGs. It has lightning, ice and fire attacks, which are the basic elements. It is an easy boss because it has very low health for this point of the game. Only the hitbox is kind of small and sometimes it spawns some clones, and if you hit the clone and not the original one, you will spawn a phantasmal dragon, which is a pretty hard sub-boss to beat. Also, at this difficulty, it spawns some shadow orbs that's common in the casual pattern. You can also dodge them. You can use this boss, DPS is high. Any comments?
Well, the projectiles were kind of confusing, but they seem apart.
Oh, wait, I have to cut you off here. I die from a projectile after the boss is killed. This counts as a kill. I will not hear anything from you in the comments. Please don't trash talk me, this counts. This was the only hard worm boss in the entirety of the game. This is Astrum Deus. This is again in the Astral Infection biome, which I like a lot. It has two phases, okay? The first phase, it's your standard worm boss. It fires projectiles. It also leaves some kind of mine bombs behind where it moves. But we have very high DPS. You can also use the second ability to ground pound it a bit, like we do in the Super Mario Bros. Games, you know. But the problem here is the second phase. In the second phase, basically what happens is the worm splits into two smaller worms, but they do not share their HP. Each worm has its own HP, and in order to defeat the boss, you need to defeat one of the two worms. You don't have to defeat both. But when you damage the one worm, the other doesn't take damage. And basically, if you don't focus on one boss, it's like fighting this boss with double its health, because you will be splitting your DPS from one worm to the other. And you have to do that because, as you can see, the projectiles are too much once again, and you cannot focus on dealing damage to one of the worms, because otherwise you will not dodge properly and you will die. What do you think of this?
Well, yeah, the second phase definitely looks harder, coming at you, and as you said, it's kind of hard to focus and remember which one of the worms do damage in order to take them. It looks kind of weird, and you need to keep a lot of things in mind at the same time.
The one thing that this helps in this fight is that the one worm is blue, the other one is orange, and basically the health bars alternate at the bottom of the screen. And later I noticed that one of the two worms, I don't remember which one it was, I think it was the orange worm, was significantly lower HP than the two worms, and by the end of the fight you can kind of focus your efforts on one of the two worms, but yet again you need to pay attention on the minimap on the top right part of the screen, because it shows you the location of the worms, and I pretty much use that to my advantage. In later fights I will use the full screen map, which is a very useful addition to the Linear fight, which is that the bar judge fight, but for now it's not necessary, and we managed to defeat the boss. Did you see which worm we killed first?
Yeah, we killed the yellow one as we saw, and yeah, as you said, using the minimap was pretty useful.
Here we have Mulden himself, the final boss of Vanilla Terraria. This is basically the giant calamari man. This is the guy that we have the brain of Cthulhu, we have the eyes of Cthulhu, we have... I don't know, what else we have here? Nothing else. Oh, you can also take Mulden's legs as an Easter egg in some Terraria seeds. But right here is the fight scene, which is basically the ultimate boss. It has the 5 prototypes, it has the latest prototypes. Also, it has a mechanic where you block your children because of regeneration, so you don't heal. You have to defeat the 3 eye heads, 2 on the hands, 1 on the forehead, the fourth one over the artery. And then the door will open up and you damage it to defeat it. But yeah, Murasama head is really broken at this point and it's super fast. It's generally considered a very hard boss and very few weapons that you can do that fast. Entering post-Moonlord territory, we have the Profane Guardians. This is a trifecta of bosses. We have the Healer, we have the Commander, and we have the Warrior thing. Basically, we need to defeat them at a certain order. First the Healer, then the Warrior, then the Commander. This fight used to be much easier, but now they've made it a bit complicated. You have the prototypes from the Healer, you have the Orb thing from the Warrior. Also, the Warrior will charge you at a very fast speed later, but I want to address a question that Mick had earlier. Basically, when we have bosses that have multiple parts, like here, for example here we have 3 bosses, the HP bars don't work correctly, because they will track the HP of one boss, and then when this boss dies, they will not update correctly that the second boss has full HP. It's a problem generally, I hope the developers fix it. We do not care about this at this moment. Right here you can see I'm handling the Warrior, it has all these meteorite things. What do you think of the 3 will be the hardest?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can barely see which one of them fires projectiles, but it's really using, I would say, many projectiles, they move really fast. I don't know, it seems very hard at this point.
It is. I would consider the Warrior Profane Guardian to be the hardest because it charges at you very fast and that is very hard to dodge. While the other two charge at you but not as fast, and they have projectiles, but you know what we do about projectiles at this time, we dodge them, and you can see that the Commander and Guardian die much quicker than the Warrior.
This is the limit break ability. basically what happens is when you get 10 stacks of Rising Dragon strikes, as you can see here, I try to stack them in an improved dummy, the whole screen will fill out with those lasers and kinda damage everything around it. One very important thing that I have to say here is that when this happens, the bosses freeze in space and time, and you can damage them as long as you want, even if they will do a dash. We will see this play right here.
Having showcased the fourth ability, the Limit Break, now we fight Dragon Holy. This is a boss that is required in order to make the Yaron summoning item. This is basically a jungle eagle thing that was supposed to be a Drake, but it came from a failed experiment and it basically became like a small bird. It would also use its hatchlings later in the fight you with those feather abilities. It will make a giant wall of lasers. Oh, here we have a very good use of the Limit Break in order to freeze it and do a lot of DPS. This will be a recurring theme from now on. The Limit Break is the second most important ability after the Rising Dragon Strike. Yeah, do you like this jungle boss?
Yeah, I like it. It seems pretty cool, and all the jungle bosses, I don't know, it seems like a cool fight, I would say. And as you said, the Limit Break, it's gonna make a big difference, I think, because whenever you have the chance to use it, it's just going to do much damage without everything afraid of taking.
Yeah, the only problem with this fight are those laser walls that it spawns because they block you from moving from one point to the screen to the other. Fortunately, we can use the Limit Break and Adrenaline here in order to deal a shit ton of DPS. When we are able to use the Adrenaline meter, it's very good. We are not able to do this very often because we are in a melee playthrough, we do not dodge everything. But the rage meter is much more prominent because we are very close to the enemy, so it fills up more quickly. So, Providence. This was the hardest boss in my first playthrough of Calamity. I just wanted to do this shit. I think they nerfed it later in order in terms of HP and stuff. But now it is very easy. I used to do a range playthrough and maybe that's why it was hard. Here I find it easy because we are doing a melee playthrough and Providence is one of the very few bosses that does not deal contact damage. So we can get very close and damage it a lot. Also right here we go to the Sky Island because this fight is very hectic. And I also remind you that when we hit an enemy with our 2 melee strikes, the flight timer resets. So you can always fly and never lose our flight time and fall down. So this has specific attacks where it will shoot pierces you, it will laser you, restars. They are kind of a true damage thing in Terraria. Also, you can see the Profane Guardians are here. They are back to guard their queen of some sort. Yeah, what do you think of this?
Well, it looks kind of harder because the Guardians are back and they're kind of affecting it, as you said. But I don't know. It is hard at some point, but at others it's up because you can see clearly the projectiles. It's not nice like in some other boss fights, and of course you have limitations.
Precisely, and Limit Break is very broken at this fight because Providence has giant hitbox, so most of the lasers from the Limit Break will hit it, and it will also deal a lot of damage. It also has a very cool death animation, as we can see right here. As we fight the Ceaseless Void, I will explain something that Miss very smartly asked. At some bosses, you cannot see the minimap. I do that because at some bosses the minimap is not useful at all, and it basically just blocks a tiny part of your screen, so I remove it in order to have better visibility. So this boss is one of the three, I would say, Devour Worm Guardians. They all spawn with the same item used against the Bryons. This is the Devour Frost Guardian that spawns in the dungeon. We have one in space and we have one in hell. This is the first one. Basically works like a black hole kind of enemy where we have to defeat the orb thingy, and then you can do damage with the
Well, yeah, it looks kinda cool, but as we can see again, we're in a closed space. But I just have the question: why does the health bar sometimes become blue?
Yeah, when that happens in the boss fight, basically the boss has some kind of shield or some kind of overshield, and you have to damage this blue health bar first in order to get the actual health bar of the boss. And some bosses like this one, when the health bar becomes blue, they are basically invulnerable for a short time. For the second of the Bar of God's Guardian, we have the Storm River. This is once again our favorite kind of boss, a worm boss. For the first phase you can only damage its tail, that's a bit unique, and we will move in a circular pattern in order to chase after its tail, literally. And later you can damage the entire body, but it will charge very fast at us, and it will spawn some tornadoes which block off some of the path, also despite the space. And normally we have a weakened gravity, which makes it harder because you cannot fall as fast, but we use the gravity normalizing portion in order to circumvent that. Do you like this?
Well, yeah, it looks kinda cool and confusing. I think something like snow comes in the screen and it kinda blends into the projectile, so it's really confusing to distinguish them, I think.
Yes, this is the warning sign for when will the ice cubes drop and then damage you, and also right here we can see the tornadoes I was talking about earlier. And this is one of the bosses where the limit break is very useful because it damages the entire body and it deals a crazy amount of DPS, basically 10 to 15% of the boss's health in 1 second, and yeah, it was very useful here. And for the final one we have Cygnus. This is the Hell one. This is basically a ghoul, Reaper kind of thing. It charges you, it has 40 cards which is not before. It has this attack where it spawns some balls to the right and the left and they basically charge at you. This is the easiest of the trick in my opinion because it charges at you and with the Murasama you can end up with a ton of DPS to it. It also has very cool drops. It does the Cosmic Kunai, it does the cloak that lets you teleport. It has some cool stuff, but we will not be in this phase. It was just one of the easier possible of bosses. Another one of the final bosses. This is the final boss for the dungeon, Poltergeist. This is basically a hardened Platera fight because later in the fight it will spawn a clone of itself which will damage you and charge at you, but you cannot damage it. You only need to damage the original boss. So we make once again very good use of the lead deck in order to clear the top of the DPS. Basically this is the only boss that can be named during the fight, such as Necroplasm, later becomes Necro-Gas, and then Poltergeist. It's kinda weird, I didn't do so many facts about it. Yeah, if you press this one, all this is the void one, as of the bottom of the castle.
Well, I would say I prefer this one. Again, we're in a closed space and it's kind of tough, but it definitely moves faster, the potential come at you faster as well. And yeah, but it's nothing for your master abilities.
Now, for Duke Fishron's grandpa, we have the old Duke, which is, as its name suggests, a harder Duke Fishron fight. This one gave me a lot of trouble, mainly because of the tornadoes it spawns. They are basically some acid tornadoes, which suck you in, and if you go inside of them, you will take a giant amount of damage, like 400 HP for damage, which is more than half of HP at this point. And they are very big, so they take up a large portion of the screen when you're close to them. Also, we have the toxic clouds from Akatsu's sketch as well. So this is a fight with a very crowded scene. Fortunately, we can kill the sharks with our Murasama before they get low, which is a problem for other weapons. Also, we do a lot of Rising Dragon strikes, and we can use the link deck very often and very effectively. Yeah. Do you think that this boss is harder, or Poltergeist from before was harder?
Well, there are some obvious differences. I mean, here you have a lot more space to work on, but as you said, it's harder, it's a harder build fight, so I don't know, I guess this one, and its health is much more than the other one.
Yeah, our DPS is noticeably slower. I don't know if the scaling kinda breaks at this point with the Murasama, you know, where you say that the damage scales in order of course we can defeat it. But we also have smaller damage windows, because at the other fight, what we did was we were fighting in a closed space, and we were very close to boss the entire time, so we could deal damage the entire time. This is not the case here. Oh, here you can see the third phase kind of thing that we did, but not exactly, because it isn't invincible or invisible for that matter. But it decides that you have a much better pattern. For example, it kind of predicts when you will go and touch the head, but fortunately I am able to defeat this, and we can move on to basically the easiest boss of the entire post-Moon Lord progression. And now the Devour of Gods fight is such a fucking joke. It is the easiest worm boss of the game. The limit break and the Murasama go crazy at the fight. So basically, yeah, this is the last of the easy fight. Then I will commentate a lot. Do you have any kind of final words to say for this video?
Well, yeah, I think some worm fights are hard, some worm fights are easy, but this one just goes by super quick. I mean, the scaling is kind of weird at this point, but yeah, I guess it's Murasama.
It's Murasama. That describes the entire thing. And you shouldn't be able to kill a boss with this, but yeah, like, okay, this is ridiculous. Also, it has a death animation as well, like we see on Rogue. And now we will move on to the 3 hardest boss fights of the game.
Perhaps my favorite boss in the game, Yaron. It is also my profile picture in the video. Yaron, the Jungle Dragon. This is basically a Duke Fishron kind of clone boss, but much harder, of course. Here I use the limit break very well. As you can see, Yaron froze in space, and I managed to get a lot of hits in. One important thing to note is that those pillars that you can see, as you could see on the left before, are the limits of the arena. So basically, if you go out of those limits, you cannot damage Yaron, and he will one-shot you, whatever you do. Right here he does his bullet hell phase, which he just fires a ton of flames. It's very hard to dodge. In this first phase, we try to do the Rising Dagger sides as much as we can, because his dashes are shorter, and we can land it easier, because the limit break basically allows us to do most of the damage. Right here I stay very close to the edge in order to trigger his tornadoes, because those do damage as well, but they will spawn if you let them spawn. I have let you spawn. What do you think of this?
Well, it looks really hard, really complicated. The Yaron is really fast, and the projectiles are really hard to dodge, so the fact that you have to stay inbound the whole time makes it even harder. But with good use of the Murasama, I guess it could be easier probably, but it looks really hard.
Yeah, before I want to say that we do the God Slayer dash in order to dodge all of these flames. This is the second phase. The dashes are larger, the attacks are harder to dodge. You will see in a bit that the tornadoes are huge this time. It is no way you're dodging all of this shit. That's why we have our revive, that's why we have our dashes, that's why we have our dodges, we have all these defensive measures. The defense is very important at this part of the game, because otherwise you cannot work. You see right here that the unit take is extremely important. It's like where I do most of my combos. Here I use the God Slayer dash again. It is an extremely hefty battle, very fun, very hard. I did about 50 attempts of this boss, I think. It could be worse. Oh, here you can also see the fire rain attack kind of thing. We also spam the Rising Dragon strikes even if we don't land them, because the mobility is crucial for this fight, otherwise you can't dodge anything. I also don't think we have a dash for this fight. I removed the accessory, I will see it later. I removed the accessory for dashing because the damage accessory was very important. As you can see here, we are very close to defeating it. I was super nervous at this point. And we defeated, and I died later because an attack went off right at the moment as I defeat him. But it counts, he died, he dropped his loot, so we will count this as a win.
Wow, that was a really clutch moment. You killed him and he died the next second, the second right after. That was magnificent.
This is the latest boss added for the Calamity mod, the Exxon X. So basically what we fought in hard mode will now be fought at the same time, and they will be much harder. The arena is the entire world for this fight. We start with the twins, which in this case are called Artemis and Apollo. My nose. We fought those first. You can choose what you will fight first because they are the ones we want to kill last, and we want to get some damage off right now in order to have them at 70% HP. When they reach 70% HP, the other two will spawn. The one is called Ares, the god of war, and the other one is called Thanatos, the god of death. They will fight you simultaneously. It is the most effective fight of all Calamity by far. Like, for you that you are a new viewer, what do you think of this chaos?
I mean, it basically looks like chaos. The battle is so hectic, so many things are happening simultaneously, and you have to be very, very precise with your movement, with the moment you attack, everything. It looks hectic.
It is. Right now we want to get Ares to 40% HP, because when we do that, the other two bosses will temporarily leave, and we will fight Ares until he dies. This is what happens here. He's also going berserk. This is his final phase. His attacks are much faster. The damage right here. He does a squeaking laser on the screen. This is very fun to dodge. We don't dodge it. We don't dodge all of it, but we are pretty good. We have our buffs. We have the potion coming up, we have our revive ready, we have our dodges ready. Right here I spam the dragon side in order to get my limit break. This is once again the base way to deal damage. This is the second time to do the circulating attack. We can attack these ramps right here to deal damage, but we will soon die. Like, this was very hard to dodge. So now comes the technical part. We are left with Thanatos and the two twins. We wanna damage Thanatos first because I found it very hard to kill Thanatos for some reason. Basically what happens is, he's a world boss, but he's invincible. The only time you can damage him is when he fires lasers, because the lasers he fires are from segments from his body, and they turn red, and you can damage him only there. So basically, if you are off screen, which I mostly am, you cannot see what opens up. The limit break is very useful here because it freezes him and the lasers go through his entire body and deal super damage. So now this is the hardest part of the guide for me because I have to kill Thanatos without letting the queens kill me because I can move completely. Right here I do a ton of damage with Thanatos. He goes again to 40% HP. So now we have to kill him for doing the twins. Right here I use my Rising Dragon Strikes for defense. I dodge him. I wait for my cooldowns to come back. I dodge his super duper wow charged laser attack. And basically I wanna be in the best shape that I can be in order to finish up the twins. Any comments for now?
Wow, I mean, the knowledge you keep in your head while you're battling is absurd. I mean, even though as we said, it's invisible, so we have to like some specific parts while it fires lasers at you. And yeah, the showcase of the Muramasa, they is very. I mean, if you're using them in a very in a way that you can that deals so much damage to the bosses, and also for defense, as you said, the dashes are very different.
So yeah, here we are at the final boss. This is attempt 100 or something because we're hard. I use it once again. So about in a little bit of time I do a massive blunder. I don't know why the fuck this happened. I never understood what I did there. So as I'm closing to win this fight against the twins, I leave them for last because they are the easiest to dodge in the desert phase and I wanted to be safe. I didn't want to die in the last moment. That happened with the other bosses. So basically what happened here is I dropped my sword. I dropped it with some, I don't know why I did that, but instead of panicking I tried to stay cool. I remember I have my asphalt bridge below, so here I get it back so I can continue the fight. It was a very stressful tournament. I promise I didn't throw for content, but yeah, thankfully I can get it back and finish up the fight. It was so stressful, like you can see the movement is so hectic for these final moments because I'm so stressed out because I'm gonna die. Right here I kill it. Very satisfyingly, we get a little cutscene from Draydon. He is the creator of the Exomex and he has some dialogue where he says, respect, I can't do anything more to help you, so yeah, pretty much goodbye. That was the boss. How do you think the final moments?
Wow, the moment when you dropped the sword, that was so funny. I think you did it to flex on the bosses that you could kill them. But yeah, that was by far the most hectic fight. The most hectic fight of all of them, so I mean that was a pretty hard one.
And for the final boss we have Calamitas herself, which the morph is named after. This is a boss with 5 bullet hells where you cannot damage it. This is the first one. As you can see, the screen fills out with those skull-like projectiles. This is gonna happen 5 times throughout the 5. You have to dodge all of them. This is basically just reflexes. We need to kill those little ball things here and from the other side in order to damage Calamity. I am pretty accustomed to the Calamity fight. I've beaten it a dozen of times at this point. The most important thing to note is that Calamity keeps her distance from you, so you cannot use basic attacks. So once again, the Rising Dragon Strike will be spammed. What do you think of this boss compared to the Exomex? Like, do you think it's more harder? It's easier? One last thing to note before you say your opinion, I want to say that we have a 150x150 arena to fight here. We cannot escape this arena. This is a very small arena and very compressing. And I want you to tell your opinion as we enter the second bullet here.
Well, as you said, you are basically closed in a really small box, kinda like Yaron, but a smaller one. The projectiles, as I can see, are I think more than the Exomex one, but at least you don't have to focus on that many bosses simultaneously. But it still looks very hard, and as you said, it keeps its distance, so it's really hard. find the opportunity to damage it.
Yeah. One of the harder parts of this fight is the brimstone darts, where basically it fires one big ball of fire which splits, as it did here, in a circular pattern and fires and pretty much fills your entire screen. One also really hard part of the fight which is coming up are its brothers, so Calamita spawns her brothers and you need to fight them and they keep their distance even more. And as you can see right here, one is on either side of this. I thankfully had my limit break right here and I did a huge chunk to the left brother. They fill the screen even more because Calamita keeps attacking you despite being out of the fight pretty much for now. But if you beat this part of the fight, which I managed to do right here in a little bit, you're basically set, because for the rest of the fight pretty much the same stuff happens, and by now you have momentum, you know how to use your dash correctly to dodge. We also have our punching ready, we have our revive ready, we have our dodge ready, we have many ways to tank damage for this fight. Yeah, so pretty much what you have to do is be very familiar with the attack patterns of the left boss because it's harder. The right boss, those little punches it throws are not that hard to dodge because they're slower. Right here, I don't know, I think we killed it. Yes, we did. So now we can go back to damaging Calamitas.
Wow, it looks pretty good, and as you said, you can slow play it to wait for the build of the boss and stuff, but you still have to memorize the attack pattern and where the projectiles go, which is still really hard to remember in the moment.
One change at this bullet hell is that the brimstone moons spawn, which are very big damaging moons that fill up even more of the screen. And because we are on master mode and Revengeance, there are 4, normally there are 2, but we are real gamers and we play on the hardest difficulty, as you all know. So now Calamity is really low and we basically have to get here to about 25%, 20% in order to trigger the last bullet hell phase. But this one, oh no, first we need to figure out the meaning of theirs. The last bullet hell is not that hard because you have the moons, you have the brimstone darts, so the skull projectiles are actually lower in number as the skull projectiles from the hardest bullet phases, and I consider those to be the most difficult. So I prefer actually this bullet hell from the others. It will trigger me a little bit once we deal enough damage, because as you can see I am more focused on dodging as of dealing damage because it is a greater priority for me to dodge very carefully. So yeah, as you can see there are a much smaller amount of projectiles from the skulls. There are the other of course and the moons which make it difficult, but basically circling around in the arena will allow you to dodge them. So now this is the final phase for Calamity. The little orb things from the beginning of the fight will spawn again and you have to kill them again right here in order to damage her. But for now we have almost our potion up, we're full HP, we have our revive up. Basically every defensive measure we have is not on cooldown, we can use it, so we're pretty set for the rest of the fight. I wanted to point out that the purity accessory right here was very, very, very important because it allows us to heal up our debuffs, and also the nano machines accessory from the Exomex allows us to use our adrenaline in order to heal up instead of deal more damage, and that is used throughout this fight for a lot of healing. And because we don't need extra damage, because Calamity is usually in not in a damage phase, you want to do this. So now we have defeated Calamity and we have completed this playthrough. It was super fun, I loved it. It was my favorite video to make and I'm very glad that I did it. And thank you Mich for contributing to this video.
Well, thanks for having me there on the game where it was a blast, and just all the bosses, the Murasama, it was pretty amazing.
Once again, thank you guys for watching. It was a blast making it. I hope you enjoyed this video and enjoy the final clip of an attempted boss rush by the Murasama.